The tides are caused by the sun and the moon. When the moon and sun are aligned, there's extra gravity pull. So there's higher high tide and a lower low tide. Now we're about 5:40, so the tide is 09 at 5, that's almost 1 meter. And then we're going to cut across past Tekukor, and then we cut across the Jong fairway. So these spring tides happen during full moon and new moon. No one wants to come at the crack of dawn at these ungodly hours. Very few people are willing to make that sacrifice to come. So I'm very grateful for those who do. Okay, Pulau Jong. It's really tiny. Most of it is underwater. It's a submerged reef flat. Pulau Jong is one of the last islands that have not yet been reclaimed. So all our islands used to look like this.
It works.
Wow, look at that. Look, there's something on the cloud. See, it's being lit up from below. See the calm water, the reflections on the light tells you whether it's shallow and calm in between the island and the other side of the reef flat. I got somebody to hold on to. Ow! Okay. Okay. This is how grandma does it. Oh. Wait, hang on. Oh my god, it's huge!
It's fat.
Oh, this is the black-tailed. Look at the giant sea hare.
Okay.
It's a slug. This is the only time we get to see all these animals because otherwise they're covered in water. And then in Singapore, our water tends to be not very clear. So even when you dive, you don't get such a beautiful close-up view of them. Oh wow, this is a magnificent anemone. It doesn't look very magnificent out of the water, but it's quite pretty. As you can see, it's identified by these large tentacles that look like chendol. It's kind of thick and fat, whereas all the other tentacles of other anemones are much skinnier. They look like bihun. Yeah, this is the mouth in the center. He's unhappy because he's out of the water, but it's okay, he's not dying. The tide will come in and cover him and then he'll all be fluffy again. When I go on my surveys, right, because I've done it several times, so I always like to look at the baseline. So looking at common animals, are they still there? And they're numerous, are there? And then any new animals, right? Sometimes there's a sudden explosion of a particular animal, then just take note of it. Wow, look here, we have a smallish clam, but still quite large, so it's probably a man clam, papa clam. This is a new clam. I mean, it was probably always here, but this is the first time that our team have seen it. Because we don't see everything even though we come here. But we only come here only once a year. Yeah. So this is great. Love it! Oh, good idea. What do you think it is? Yeah, it's really slimy. Oh my god, look at the size of that sponge. It looks better. It looks better when you're seeing it for yourself, you know. Yeah, it is a challenge to make people think that all these blobs are interesting. This is lush, yeah. It's like 100% coverage lah. First time I went to Pulau Bin, the first time I've been to a shore, I never thought that you could find something like that in Singapore. When we got to the edge, right, it became reefy, there was a lot of sponges, there's all these colorful animals, nothing I've ever seen before. So I just took pictures, film camera, and didn't know what to do with it, yeah. Found anything nice, Marcus? So these are garlic bread sea cucumbers. Elsewhere in the world, they're generally over-harvested. They told me they're going to reclaim this place in 6 months' time. And it just broke my heart. I mean, like, how can we lose this place, right? I didn't know what to do. All I knew was I could bring people to see it. And that's all I did. I just brought people to see it. I said, nah, look. They said, what is it? I don't know. You just take pictures. How was today's survey? I think we managed to cover the areas that we intended to cover. But the grass looks good. There's lots of life. Tide is turning. All right, let's go. After Chek Jawa was saved, I said, wow, we found Chek Jawa simply because we went out at low tide. So if you go at low tide, are there other Chek Jawas in Singapore? So I said, okay, let's just make it my personal mission to go visit every shore at low spring tide. For me, it's just like, it has become an unhealthy obsession. Like, if it's low tide and I'm not out there, I feel like I'm missing out something.
Pulau Hantu is pretty remote. Even though it's a recreational island, nobody really comes here. I come to Pulau Hantu to monitor my experiments about 10 to 20 times a year. As you walk along the seawall, you walk along the same rock. It becomes very familiar. Like with each step, you kind of remember the shape of each rock. I'm Lynette. I'm a postdoc at NUS. I work in the experimental marine ecology lab. This started as an honours project. I was basically asked to make seawalls better. And at first, I was very skeptical because it's like, what do you mean by make seawalls better? Seawalls, they are an artificial man-made structure. If you saw the natural rocky shore and then you came to the seawall, then you would feel like it's a lot less diverse. I cannot possibly change the seawall. So that was the first thing, to see if enhancing complexity will enhance diversity. So when we deployed our house, we left them out, and I only came back 1 month later to check on them. And I wasn't expecting to see anything on the tiles.
Oh my god, so cute! I love it! Oh, what's the strongest?
What's that?
Snail or hermit crab?
Inside is hermit crab.
It's a hermit crab!
The first month of my first experiment, there was so much green algae because they are the ephemeral green turfs. I was surprised. Certain algae would never grow at this band of the intertidal zone. You can see very clearly that the rocks are either grazed down or barren compared to the tiles, which are full of life. In an ideal world, you don't want seawalls to be built. You want the natural environment. And for those that have already been built, is there a way to make them better for life? And I think that is the most important for truly sustainable solutions.
So the southern islands have very unique ecosystems and habitats that you cannot replicate in Singapore and you cannot get back. We've lost a lot of the mangroves through reclamation and development. Would it have been better to leave the island as it was in the past? Sure. But in Singapore, you have to make difficult decisions because land is scarce. So if you're going to make a decision that's going to be this impactful, then you need to make mitigations that are meaningful.
Singapore waters, through coastal development, through time, has degraded. Villagers on the island used to say the visibility was over 10 meters, but now it has lessened. Right, let's load up. It's not low tide, so it's okay. All right, I think it's time to go diving. Island, one of our two study sites. We'll be doing a dive first and collecting some of the tech corals that we've got underwater. The two of you, Yan Xiang and Claire, you'll be on the boat, making sure that we've got everything ready. So essentially, I'm trying to understand corals better, how they respond to certain stresses and how they respond in certain environmental conditions. So one of the things that we're trying to understand with our study is for Singapore waters and for the corals in Singapore, how they're still able to survive in such a dynamic environment. The waters in Singapore are quite turbid. So it reduces the amount of light reaching the reefs. Therefore, it reduces the amount of food from photosynthesis that a coral can obtain. You have these seasonal fluctuations in light happening every single year. What we want to understand by studying the corals is to see how they respond to these huge seasonal changes. How do you predict what they're going to be facing in the next few decades? Okay. Okay, samples up. The reason why we always study corals is because they're what we call a key ecosystem animal or group or organism. Key ecosystem engineers of the reef. They're like the ever-increasing, self-repairing, because they do recover, HDB blocks for marine life. All right, let's start doing this now. Currently, we have 3 species. We've got Porites lutea, which is a massive coral. They're able to live for a very long time as well, hundreds and hundreds of years. We've got Pachyceres speciosa, and then we've got Marylina ampliata. So we're actually loading the corals and putting them into these chambers. A3, murk A3. We're going to be measuring how much the oxygen in these airtight and watertight chambers change over the course of an hour. Okay. This will tell us how much energy they have spare for, all sorts of other needs they have, reproduction, growth.
Yeah, pack 4.
Pack 4.
Pack
5. Okay. In B1. All right, let's go down. We've got over 250 species of hard coral still, which is around half of what you find in the Great Barrier Reef in 0.0001% of area. You would think living in Singapore, you've got this urban landscape behind you. We've got one of the world's busiest spots, but we have such rich diversity of corals. I think nothing beats like actually being able to come down from the marine station, just dive off like 5 minutes away. I think that brings me the greatest joy.
I think most people don't realize that we actually have life under the water. They think the water is polluted, and because it's murky, you can't see through the water. So because you can't see it, they think there's nothing there.
Probably for a little dot in the map, and first world country and a highly urbanized state and a population of over 6 million, we still have an amazing biodiversity because we are in the right part of the world. 1 degree, 10 minutes north of the equator. We are in the middle of the oldest rainforest on the planet. We have the most diverse mangroves in this part of the world. We have the most diverse coral reefs in this part of the world. Even though Singapore may have lost a lot along the way to development, we still protect a lot.
I would consider myself son of Ubin. I think many take Ubin for granted because we don't stop and think about how Ubin has contributed to nation building, the legacy left behind.
Singapura ni memang asal orang pulau. Tapi kita dah tinggal tanah besar dulu. Singapura tu nama pulau dah hilang. Nama pulau Singapura dah hilang. Itulah saya harap generasi muda kalau boleh dia ikutlah macam kita orang pulau. Walaupun orang-orang baru ni, anak-anak dia orang yang ada pun belajar. Ikut ke laut, ikut bapak dia yang ada ke laut.
The islands are constantly changing even before our very eyes. I think that as Singaporeans, we are taught a particular version of history. This research has provided the different layers of history and heritage that you would not find out just by reading your history books. There are places that point to significant elements of Singapore's history. And there are places that allows you to appreciate the ways in which the natural and the cultural actually intertwine with one another. We need to try to preserve whatever that we can.